You are 100% unadulterated energy. You have no choice but movement. You aren't acted on. You are action. You have the power to make the world a better place. You already know how to do it. Volunteer now for the American Red Cross. Call your local chapter for details.
Only fools, idiots, and reporters, and those terms are rapidly becoming interchangeable, are still here in Myrtle Beach.
I'm hanging on here to a bush to make sure I don't lose my footing. This was ground zero of Hurricane Fran, and you're right.
These are the pictures you expect to see during a hurricane. Winds gusting up to 80 miles an hour.
And now, from News Channel 11, a Storm Track 96 special, Hurricane Fran, the storm of the century.
Hello, I'm Larry Stogner.
And I'm Miriam Thomas. September 5th and 6th, 1996 will long be remembered as the days on which North Carolina was battered by Hurricane Fran.
It will surely go down as one of those benchmark storms against which future hurricanes will be measured.
She struck with a fury the North Carolina coast hasn't seen in 42 years.
And when the sun came up, the devastation along many of our beaches was just unbelievable. Homes washed into the sea, boats flung onto shore.
Inland, the devastation continued as torrential rains set off flash flooding across the heart of Carolina.
The high winds took down trees by the thousands, and as they fell, so did the power lines, knocking out electricity to more than 1 million North Carolinians.
But the real tragedy came as those falling trees caused the majority of the deaths attributed to Hurricane Fran.
Today I am declaring a major disaster in the state of North Carolina.
The cleanup began almost immediately, but it's going to be months before it's complete.
And the destruction didn't end once the winds died down. A few days later, heavy rains once again sent swollen rivers over their banks.
I would like to know why the man at the dam up in Raleigh turned the water down on us down here, because they said it was more important to let the water come down here and hurt 1,000 people than 1 million people in Raleigh. What's wrong? Ain't our homes just as good as their homes up there?
That frustration was felt by many people who live on the Neuse River in Wayne County as the Army Corps of Engineers decided to open the floodgates on Falls Lake to prevent the dam from breaking.
It was a week of unbelievable stories that tested the patience of almost everyone.
And this tape can serve as your permanent record. Over the next 2 hours, we'll show you what it was like as Fran made her way across the state, and you'll see the damage she left behind.
We'll begin on the evening of September 5th as Fran started to make her presence felt on the coast.
Well, we continue our team coverage right now with Sabrina Smith in Holden Beach, very close to Fran's eye. And Sabrina, from the looks of it, looks very, very close right now.
Yes, I would dare say that Fran has arrived. We're seeing wind gusts of up to 80 miles per hour, and when they come, and I assure you they will here shortly, you really have to lean into the wind to keep your footing. Some things here have already given way. I'll get my photographer, Marshall Crumpler, to pan over here. You can see this sign has already given way. When we walked out here just an hour or so ago, this sign was just doing fine. Over here you can see he's looking at some metal that has come off the roof from a building over there and gotten stuck behind that fence. Things are not doing well right now, and Fran really is not all the way here. We've talked to some of the police around here, and they say they expect her to be in here in about 2 to 3 hours. Things could get much worse. We're hanging in there, but we'll throw it back to you.
Sabrina, looks pretty rough there.
It is getting very rough, Gary. This is one of those 80-mile-an-hour wind gusts we've been trying to tell you about, and we're still hearing that the hurricane is a little bit offshore and it could get a lot worse. Now, if you're having trouble with our video, it's because we're getting hit with so much rain right now. They cleared this island off, a mandatory evacuation around 2 o'clock. We had to leave, but we shot the pictures we could before we left.
The big thing is water surge. What we call the storm surge of water. And if this thing hits at 12 feet high, we're going to lose our last dunes all along the oceanfront strand here.
Many residents had their biggest fears legitimized before they ever left the island.
All persons are requested to leave the island by 2
Because within just a few hours of the evacuation calls, Fran was moving in furiously. Winds picked up to 30 miles per hour by noon, and waves were climbing 10 feet before breaking. This is the turbulent surf with Hurricane Fran just hours away. There is no beach left to walk on here. The homes are teetering on the edge. They're ready to fall in. The ocean was reaching the roadway by 2, and shingles were getting ready to fly. And as the last patrols were clearing the island, folks were saying goodbye. Two things I want to remind you of to show you exactly how rough this storm is. We took those pictures about 4 hours ago, and we're now a good mile off of Holden Beach across from the island, so you can only imagine how bad it is there.
Now, the winds have picked up here quite a bit here in the Myrtle Beach area, and as you can tell, only fools, idiots, and reporters, and those terms are rapidly becoming interchangeable, are still here in Myrtle Beach as this storm is plowing ashore. It's still a couple of hours away, but Myrtle Beach is also taking a hammering.
So let's go quickly back out to the coast, and News Channel 11's George Mallet live at Myrtle Beach. George?
This is what it looks like out here right now. I'm going to get Todd Pierce to pan over and just show you what the Atlantic Ocean is looking like. You checked in with Dave Bolick a little bit earlier, and things were not quite this bad at that point. Things have gotten a lot worse right now. The wind's picking up, the surf moving in. Now, if we get the storm surge here, we are talking about 4 feet above where I am right now. So obviously, when you check back with me later tonight, I'll be on higher ground.
The hurricane is just about on the Cape Fear coast. Here's a look at Doppler radar out of Wilmington. Now, we'll orient you here. This is Brunswick County, New Hanover County, where Wilmington is located. RDU right up in here, and the Sandhills, Pope Air Force Base, Cumberland County right here. Here's the hurricane now. Pretty broad eye. It's become a little diffuse, but the eye just offshore from the Cape Fear coast. It's heaviest rain bands, the most intense weather. We can really only imagining what's happening there now, right on the Cape Fear coast, New Hanover, Brunswick counties, and also be spreading up into Pender County as well as the eye wall moves north-northwesterly onto the south coast. The latest reports are the last one we got in from an amateur radio operator. 100-mile-per-hour sustained winds at Southport with gusts to 120 miles per hour. And as the eye goes ashore, near and to the east of where the eye goes ashore is where you'll get the surge or the storm surge where it causes the most damage, 8 to 16 feet possible. Fortunately, this is the time of low tide, so the damage may be minimized somewhat because of that.
Brunswick and New Hanover counties took a major beating tonight. Sabrina Smith is in Brunswick County, very close to where the hurricane struck.
Sabrina, we understand that some of the winds are being clocked at 120 miles an hour, the largest recorded gusts of this whole storm. You look like you're in a bit of a gust there.
That's exactly right. I'm having a hard time hearing you just because of the wind. I'm hanging on here to a bush to make sure I don't lose my footing. This was ground zero of Hurricane Fran, and you're right, 120-mile-an-hour winds. We're at least over 100 now, and it is hard to hang on. If you look behind me, you can see that there is a branch in the road. This is light damage compared to what we saw on the way up here. There were many, many, many trees across the roads. Many roads completely flooded out, trees on houses, power lines down. Of course, we rode out the storm down near Holden Beach in an area called Supply, North Carolina, and here is how Hurricane Fran came and left us there.
You see some houses that already have been vacated, that they're ready to just fall in. I mean, they're going in now.
Hurricane Fran showed up in force right around 2 o'clock, packing winds of up to 50 miles per hour and sending the ocean not just under homes, but right out into the street. That's when we backed off of the island. Everyone was ordered to evacuate, and Fran was getting closer. Winds eventually climbed up to 100 miles per hour, rocking stoplights and tearing apart roofs. Roads and parking lots flooded with 2 feet of water on the mainland. Down at the Intracoastal Waterway, winds had waves washing away from the shore and sheets of rain dancing across the water. Okay, we are here still in Southport, North Carolina. We're right beside where the ferry comes in at Southport, seeing about 100-mile-an-hour winds. Just to tell you, the worst of the storm right now is in Wilmington. We have heard word of gas line breaks there, 10 feet of water across many roads. But to ease some of the worries, we feel like we are okay here. We're in a clearing, so there aren't things flying right now, and the rain actually has let up. Larry, Miriam?
Before you go, you experienced Hurricane Bertha. Can you compare these two storms at all?
Yes, this is much, much worse than Bertha. It was expected to be a lot worse down near Holden Beach, and they're saying that this was not nearly what Bertha was down at Holden Beach. But up toward Atlantic Beach, where I rode out Bertha, this doesn't even compare. It's a lot worse. You could keep your footing there, and I can't stand up without holding on.
Okay, folks, just so you know the power, the magnitude of this Hurricane Fran, we're going to take you back to Brunswick County now, and News Channel 11's Sabrina Smith.
Looks like she's still fighting the elements. Sabrina.
That's exactly right. We're still feeling winds probably up around 100 miles per hour, like we told you before. This was ground zero of Hurricane Fran when she passed through. She's just a little bit, the eye anyway, she's still here obviously. The eye anyway is a little bit north of here in Wilmington. We're going to show you what the water looks like. Now this is the Intracoastal Waterway in Southport. This is where the ferries come in. And keep in mind that there aren't usually big waves here, and you're seeing some pretty big waves and some very, very rough surf, some things flying through the air there along with the wind. I'm going to get Marshall Crumpler to pan back over here to me. You can just see the winds with this bush. And if you look underneath this bush, since we've been standing here, this is a lamp, the top of a lamp here, a street lamp that blew off the post. So we have taken shelter here behind a pole to make sure that we don't get hit with anything flying. We probably won't be able to talk to you on satellite much more this evening. Things actually have gotten worse here since the last time we joined you. The wind and the rain both have picked up.
News Channel 11's Eric Curry has been in and around Durham in the overnight hours. He joins us now with more. Eric.
Larry, for the past 12 hours, I was assigned to tour parts of the Triangle area to assess the damage caused by Fran, and it didn't take long for me to understand that you do not need to be on the coast to understand how strong Fran really is. Fran is strong, she's big, and she's dangerous. Fran entered the capital city. The problems began for emergency crews. Old oak trees that once lined the Wade Avenue district were reduced to good firewood. The heavy rains coupled with saturated soil caused several trees to fall on power lines, resulting in several outages. But Fran's punch caused problems across the region. In the downtown district of Raleigh, it wasn't hard to find debris strewn about. Heavy winds busting storefront windows. But Fran also brought tragedy to the county. Just before midnight, 2 people traveling on Highway 50 between Garner and Benson were killed instantly after their truck crashed into a downed tree.
Here's the track of the storm again. 85-mile-per-hour sustained winds as it moved into Sampson County and then over Wake County. 75-mile-per-hour winds now heading again towards the border into Virginia and out of our way.
News Channel 11's Dave Bowling joins us live from the Grand Strand. Dave, what are you seeing there this morning?
Well, Larry, it's still a little on the dark side. We're not seeing anything, but we do know that there was little or no damage here. We do also know that news helicopters are already in the air headed toward North Carolina to try to find out what the damage is on the North Carolina coast. Of course, everybody in the Virginia and Middle Atlantic states now are watching as Fran and its remnants move north. The 25-mile wide eye of the storm hit the North Carolina coastline just after nightfall, battering the Cape Fear region with 115-mile-an-hour winds. As the storm moved northward and inland, it ripped apart trees, downed power lines, and dumped heavy rains along its path. Inland, tree limbs and flooded highways made travel hazardous. Gusts as high as 120 miles an hour were reported as the storm moved north. But Fran was slightly less powerful than Hurricane Hugo in 1989. About 500,000 coastal residents were evacuated and waited out the storm inland.
Just relaxing, saying quite a few prayers.
We saw sheets of metal and signs and trash, but not a lot of little things, but very few big things.
About 2,000 National Guardsmen helped with the evacuation and provided security in deserted beach towns. Many North Carolina communities are without power this morning. Fran has arrived, the damage is done, and it's considerable. Residents of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina are breathing a sigh of relief this morning, grateful that Fran didn't do more damage here. The thousands of people who left their homes have now been told it's safe to return.
Hurricane Fran left widespread destruction along the North and South Carolina coasts overnight. First morning light gave an early glimpse of another natural catastrophe. We talked to News Channel 11's Dave Bullock a bit ago. He's comparing the damage to Hurricane Hazel. It's clear to see why. The storm's effects, however, were not just along the shoreline. This damage stretches far inland. A lot of folks here in the Triangle area had to literally blaze a path to work this morning. A lot more simply didn't go in at all. About Chapel Hill, we had a live interview a moment ago with the assistant town manager in Chapel Hill, who advised us that the town is under a state of emergency. Franklin Street was closed early this morning because of so very many downed trees. They're blocking traffic. 3 sport utility vehicles were damaged at one house when a tree fell onto them. That's been a common story this morning. There's been a rush to buy chainsaws at the Lowe's store in Chapel Hill. Eastgate Mall flooded. But I'll tell you, if you live in Chapel Hill or you're thinking of going over there, don't. It's just not a good idea. It is, many streets are impassable. And in Chapel Hill, they're needing to conserve water. Now, Durham, take a look at this. Flooding, street flooding everywhere. The Innkeeper Hotel at Highway 55 and Interstate 40 in South Durham. Cars and parking lots underwater. You're looking now at Interstate 85. Traffic backups massive. This is 15501 in Durham. Like a lot of places, the water's simply pooling. It's just been a mess out there, and it still is over much of the heart of Carolina. One of the places that lost electricity first and early on last night was the city of Fayetteville. News Channel 11's Gilbert Bays was there and filed this report for us this morning.
You could see the fury of Fran long before the sun came up in Fayetteville. Power lines and transformers littered the streets. Traffic lights at major intersections out, and the ones that did work didn't seem to know which way to turn. The tape on these windows probably saved the windows of this furniture store, but the roof was peeled back like a can of sardines. Only a few brave or foolish souls dared to venture out.
We're hungry and we wanted a place to go eat. And it was any place open.
Things falling down, you know, roofs taking off and stuff, and I guess ceilings just taking off. And that's pretty much the big thing, I guess. Things flying away, you know.
The high winds and heavy rain did a job on this tree in the front yard of Francis and Ralph Hall's home on Morganton Road, pulling it up from the roots and slamming it on its side.
We're just thankful we're just thankful that it didn't hit the house. And we're thankful we're both all right.
Power lines are down, and also the fact that we've got trees like this one right here that was snapped right off of this big oak tree down on the ground right now, and that could have knocked this power line down very easily. The storm chased thousands of people out of their homes and into area shelters.
We live in a mobile home, and I didn't want to take any chances with 2 young daughters, so we came up here.
The major concern right now, the runoff from the rain causing creeks to swell, and everyone is being told to stay home. In Fayetteville, Gilbert Bays, News Channel 11.
Well, now to our Monica Schumann, News Channel 11's Monica Schumann, who was just a bit ago in South Durham and still appears to be with photographer Bill Sandifer. Hi, folks.
Well, Miriam, all of us have been working around the clock. Bill Sandifer is one of those who's been working since the early morning and really shooting some incredible pictures. We're going to put some of those pictures up, and Bill, if you can explain to us what we're looking at, where you are, and what it takes to get those pictures.
Okay, well, this is Crabtree Mall. This it's probably just after dawn. Incredible amount of water in the parking lot. I don't think it's been this flooded since the early 70s. I was there early in the morning in the dark, and this car right here drove into the water. The driver, for some reason, chose not to stop. Last I saw of him, he was waiting out with a flashlight. The whole parking lot, I'm sure most of the first floors of the Crabtree Valley Mall stores are probably flooded. I haven't seen this in a long, long time. This is just an awful lot of water.
The destruction on the North and South Carolina shores is absolutely extensive. We're going to show you now a look at videotape shot from a helicopter flying above Southport, North Carolina, which is just over the border with South Carolina. The storm surge completely shattered some of these homes. Hurricane Fran washed away the beach in front of rows of beachfront houses. A lot of places swept off their foundations, picked up and dumped like so many toothpicks.
Aside from a few puddles here, the water has cleared out of this motel parking lot, but it's a little deceptive because the entire ground floor is just devastated because of the flooding earlier today. We've learned that many of the people who stayed at this motel overnight had been evacuated from places like Wilmington and Jacksonville, and they came here because they thought it was safe.
Coming here, and we thought it wouldn't be that big of a deal because we weren't near the coast.
But the lake in the Innkeeper parking lot of Highway 55 in Durham is proof not even the Triangle was immune from Fran's wrath.
The water was probably, well, it was at bed level
in the rooms.
Guests say they found out the hard way the motel was being taken hostage by an overflowing creek nearby.
Stepped out of bed into ankle-deep water. She said there was water in the floor, and I got up and looked out the door, and I went to open the door, and water come rushing in the door.
Guests say the motel didn't alert them of the rising waters until it was too late. Firefighters were sent in to help guests to dry ground, but for many automobiles, the rescue was too late. And what you're looking at right now is a live picture of some of the guests, some of the staff from the motel trying to get some of these cars jump-started. So far, we haven't seen any of them drive away from here on their own. So many of these people are trapped here. They're from Boone, they're from the coast. They have no way to get home, and for some of them, they have no home to go to. But in the meantime, they're trying to get the cars started, and they're trying to find a place to stay in the meantime.
This storm would have been frightening in broad daylight, but it was even scarier at night. Even those who knew they had damage didn't know just how bad it was. Some even ventured out into the pitch black night, a night devoid of power and therefore street lights as well. For some it was a mistake. Trees were down everywhere and very hard to see in the darkness. And even though some hazards were clearly visible, a few drivers took chances anyway. This was as far as this driver made it while trying to get through the floodwaters of Crabtree Creek at Crabtree Valley Mall. By the light of day, the floodwaters at the mall were obviously much worse than the driver of the vehicle had anticipated hours earlier. The flooding at the mall, although worse than many had ever seen it, isn't terribly unusual. Years ago, before flood control dams were built on Crabtree Creek, the mall flooded regularly. But these scenes around Raleigh are quite unusual. Not since the November 1988 tornado has there been damage like this in the capital city, and this seems to be more widespread. It seemed like you couldn't travel a half block without seeing a downed tree or two or a dozen. The storm made such a racket, Michael Reed says he hardly even knew this tree had fallen in his yard.
It was so noisy already. It wasn't like a explosion or anything.
Reed counts himself among the lucky. He knows this could have done more damage to his house and injured him.
We were in the back bedroom in the back, so we heard it come down and actually looked out this window and we could see that tree, and we knew it was this one because it's the only tree this size out here.
One of Reed's neighbors had a much closer call. She wasn't there when we came by, but friends tell us the woman's mother came from Wilmington to her daughter's house in Raleigh to escape Fran. But quite to the contrary, Fran blew this tree into the mother's bedroom. Fortunately, neighbors say she escaped with only a scratch.
The southern part of heaven looks more like a disaster area after Hurricane Fran passed through. A sudden drop of this tree on Franklin Street crushed the front end of a car. Another fell victim on Highway 54. And what landed in front of St. Thomas More Church left the roadway impassable. Hurricane Fran clearly left her mark on the UNC campus. Enormous trees which once shaded the campus in regal fashion were pulled from their giant bases. Curious students endeavored out to sightsee and glimpse a lesson in survival.
Our quad in front of our dorm, there's stuff down everywhere.
We woke up about around 3 and looked outside, and it just looked real hazy, and we realized it was a tree that we were looking at.
And somewhere underneath these branches really are several cars.
It's amazing. It's amazing to me.
For folks traveling between Chapel Hill and Durham on 15501, it was a watery challenge. Some cars just didn't even make it.
Fayetteville lost some of her most distinguished and magnificent residents last night, some of whom had put their roots down here long before there were people, power lines, and chainsaws. But it was the wind and violence that brought them down last night, and power lines with them. In some areas, police detoured traffic around fallen tree limbs and lines. Still, in the midst of the rain and the wind, folks ventured out, some to get last-minute supplies, others to sightsee. Some took their own chances and paid for it, like this motorist. Just as he was passing a huge tree, it fell on the hood and windshield of his car. He was slightly injured, and a good Samaritan who tried to help ended up sliding off the road. Over 900 residents spent last night in one of several shelters around Cumberland County, while my colleague Gilbert Bays was out finding some folks who thought it was fun and games.
So you can see people here at the market house acting kind of foolish.
This morning, Kathleen Ransom counted her blessings that she stayed inside and survived.
Well, before I went to sleep, I heard the wind whipping, and I said, God, please hold that tree. Well, he held it away from the house.
But a lot of other homes were trashed by falling trees. What Fran didn't tear up or rip apart, she flooded with drenching rains. In some areas, it's going to be a while before the floodwaters recede. This is backwash from Cross Creek, which took a lot of rainfall last night. I want to show you something. Part of Fran's 1-2 punch here was the fact that the ground was so saturated from all of the rain that when the winds tore through here, instead of snapping the trees off, it just pulled the roots right out of the muddy soil. It will be some time before power is fully restored and the mess is cleaned up here, but even when it is, Fayetteville just won't ever look the same.
This really is just awesome. It's just nothing to say. It's just, you just well up.
Eric Steeple's been here for over 125 years. It's been through Hazel, Donna, Bertha, just a few weeks ago.
Wilmington's historic First Baptist Church even weathered the Civil War, but Hurricane Fran was just too much. The storm's 100+ mile-per-hour winds also pulled down trees and power lines in town, but out toward the waterfront, the damage was much worse. 40-foot boats were tossed out of the marina. Boat docks flew into the street, and in some cases, there were boats still tied to their docks, but up to a quarter mile from the place where they started.
Never experienced anything like this. Didn't have any damage to the house, but the boats are a mess.
Still, thousands of people are waiting for their answers to how badly Fran hurt them. The islands are closed until emergency workers assess damage.
We rode the hurricane out right behind you, the Waterway Lodge, and it was incredible. It was incredible. I mean, the police car was right behind you, and the water was all around the police car. There were waves at those lines just 30 feet in front of them. The whole hotel was surrounded by water at one point.
This is Fran's path. 9 o'clock last night, it was ashore around Southport. That's where some of that devastating video was. 105 sustained mile-per-hour winds. It came in right around Bald Head Island and Caswell Beach. Remember now, the eye at times was 30 miles wide, so the eye was wider than this little line here. Looked like it stayed right to the west of Wilmington, making the most damaging part of the storm right to the east, and that went right over New Hanover County. Around 11 p.m., around the little town of Curry in Duplin County, Pender County, 100-mile-per-hour winds. East of Fayetteville, Salemburg, and Sampson County, 80-mile-per-hour winds at 1 a.m. was still a hurricane. Just to the east of Willow Spring, near I-40, Johnson County, southern Wake County, south of Raleigh, around 3 a.m., still a hurricane. And then it came right over Durham at 5 a.m., 65-mile-per-hour tropical storm winds. Obviously, there were gusts to hurricane strength. And by 8 a.m., it was in a little town of Ingram, northeast of South Hill, Virginia, with 55-mile-per-hour winds. So you can see the path it took and the destruction right along it, and right to the east of it, too, was immense, as this storm, still a hurricane in parts of the triangle as it moved inland. Rainfall, 9.66 inches of rain officially at the airport. Apex, 6 inches of rain. You know, that eye went right over Cary, right over Roxborough. 6 inches of rain in Butner, 7.5 in Goldsboro, 5 inches in Fayetteville, 5 inches in Carthage and Burlington, just about. Zebulon, 7.5 inches of rain. So very, very heavy rainfall amounts.
It began slowly in Mount Olive. The mangled remnants of a street awning shuddered in the wind. That was at 8. By 9, strong sustained gusts of up to 45 miles per hour whipped through Goldsboro, taking out electricity all over town. By 10 o'clock, winds were gusting to around 60 miles an hour, and these older trees were really taking a beating. This one here fell across the street, taking down 2 sets of power lines and landing on a house. It crashed through the front porch. Police rescued 4 people trapped inside.
I'm thinking that just the lines had just separated and they were just lighting candles. Until I heard the police officers when they came alongside the house. I heard somebody at the back, I heard somebody at the front. This and this and that. And I'm like, damn, what the hell's going on? That's my girlfriend over there.
If she was injured, we couldn't find out. Not even Wayne County's EMS coordinators could keep track of the long list of disasters. And there was much more to come.
These are the pictures you expect to see during a hurricane. Winds gusting up to 80 miles an hour. The shock here is this isn't the coast. This is Goldsboro, North Carolina, 80 miles inland.
And it was frightening. Folks took the threat seriously, piling into the nearest Red Cross shelter at Southern Wayne High School, leaving their shaky homes behind.
The wind was blowing very, very fierce, so we had to get out of the house and seek shelter.
Were you starting to worry?
Oh, yes. It was picking up real bad.
By 11 o'clock, the skylights had blown out of the school gym. The people inside moved to safer spots. A command went out to area rescue crews. Only move what and when you have to. Workers strained to clear trees from roads on the way to accident sites they couldn't reach. with the worst of Fran still to come.
But what is more amazing to see is the scope of the damage from the air. Photojournalist Ted Silver captured these images from News Chopper 11. This is a familiar destination for many North Raleigh shoppers, Crabtree Valley Mall. Crabtree Creek completely reclaimed the parking lot and much of the lower level of the mall.
Also in North Raleigh, you're looking in a moment here at Al Smith Buick Mazda, the dealership at Six Forks and Wake Forest. Those are cars in the dealership's inventory down there, and they appear to be a total loss.
This is a look at some of the high-priced homes in the Lassiter Mill Road area. There is obviously substantial flooding there as well.
The golf course at Carolina Country Club also took a hit. Fran's winds knocked down pine trees, toppling them like so many dominoes.
My goodness, that's Raleigh's oldest, most prestigious course right there. And coming up, we'll see a factory under construction in the town of Wake County. And as we can see from these aerial shots, the roof has caved in on this particular plant.
It's hard to say whether the winds or the water did more damage. Look at this flooding. This covering parts of Interstate 40 near Selma.
Miriam, yesterday we were telling mobile home dwellers to seek more substantial shelter. This is a perfect example of why. This trailer was just completely smashed.
Here's the scene from one river in Durham County. Got to be the Eno. The deluge from Fran's swelling this one well beyond its banks. I've never seen anything like that.
Isn't that something?
Not on the Eno.
Help is on the way. There are long lines of electrical company repair trucks that are just pouring into the area right now to help with recovery efforts. They're staging here in this area, as a matter of fact. There are also a number of workers pouring in to help with tree removal.
We're going to need that. And Larry, perhaps one of the most telling pictures, the Haw River in Alamance County, ready to overflow Interstate 85. Wow. As News Chopper 11 flew above it earlier today. Anybody who's been on 85 over the Haw has never even seen it that high alongside the road. A lot of things we're seeing that we've never seen before because of this storm.
That's true. A creek in North Raleigh overflowed its banks tonight and presented a man with a harrowing experience.
News Channel 11's Monica Schumann is live in the capital city with the very latest on that.
Monica, what happened there?
Well, Larry and Miriam, I'm just off Six Forks Road in North Raleigh, and we have learned tonight the incredible power of raging water on a flooded street and also the fear that the darkness can instill. About 8:30 tonight, Raleigh Fire and Rescue were called here to a flooded street between Our Lady of Lourdes Church and School and also Caliber Chase Apartments. Now, someone had called 911 saying they were hearing a man calling for help in some flooded woods.
He was screaming and yelling, and he was saying that he was stuck and, you know, someone to help him.
Hey! What's wrong? He said, help me, help me. So someone else in our apartment complex called for 911.
He said he was walking down the side of the street, and the current pulled him in. And I'm not sure where he went in at, because he said he washed a long ways down. He had tried to get out, and he got in some water. The water he was in was probably about 8 foot deep, right under the tree he was on. So he just got to that safe spot up on that tree and stayed there and started screaming. Yeah. He's fine. He's fine. He's just glad to be out.
Well, one of the people who was killed during Fran's destruction last night was a Bahama firefighter. He was responding to a call when, like so many of the deaths associated with this storm, a tree fell on him. News Channel 11's Eric Curry spent the evening talking with the firefighter's family. Eric, this is pretty much of a tragedy. He lost his life while trying to help someone else.
You're right. This is a terrible tragedy. You know, at times we seem to forget all across the heart of Carolina that thousands of emergency and utility company crews that are working overtime restoring power for us. That's what Bahama firefighter Ricky Dorsey was doing last night before becoming a victim of Hurricane Fran. At only 19 years of age, Ricky Dorsey was already living out his dream of becoming a fireman. It was that same desire to help others that cost him his life last night after a tree struck him while surveying storm damage. Dorsey's mom, Brenda, says the one thing she'll always remember about her son was his love for his family, friends, and his job as a volunteer fireman.
He had a little grin, just full of mischief, wasn't he, Carly? It's full of mischief and got a twinkle in his eye all the time. And he was very dedicated.
His dedication to the Bahama Fire Department was apparent. This afternoon, the department's flag flew at half-staff honoring Dorsey. Many of his colleagues are still too shaken to talk about Dorsey on camera.
It's hitting him a little bit hard right now. Your department, you know, we all get together and have a real good support group. The community has been real good.
Now, according to an initial investigation, Dorsey, along with his partner Shane Clements, responded to this site around 11:30 to help clear some trees along the road. That's when Clements told investigators that all of a sudden they heard a noise, then noticed a big tree heading their way. They tried to swerve out of its path, but say it was too late, trapping Dorsey in the truck. Clements, who continues to recover from the accident, says Dorsey is a hero because he died doing what he loved.
His spirit's going to live on in all of us, like every car we go to. Because, I mean, like everyone says, when the tones went off, he was at the station. I mean, he had the trucks fired up and ready for everybody else when they got there.
Family members say Ricky is now in a better place.
He's smiling, just saying, well, what are they crying about? I'm in good shape now.
Larry, Miriam, you know that photographer Todd Pierce and I have become something, well, like storm chasers, and that's why when Hurricane Fran started heading towards the Carolinas, we headed to Charleston. That's where we thought the storm was going to hit. After that, it was Myrtle Beach, but it missed us there as well for the most part. Turns out it came right here to the heart of Carolina, and as we came back into town today, it became very clear that we could have just as easily have stayed put and covered the story right here in our own backyards. As we returned to Wake County this afternoon, the first thing we encountered was a flooded out Highway 40. People had to wait in the eastbound lanes for a frustratingly long time.
I need to get home. My family needs me. My husband needs me. He wants the kids at home.
He's hot. He's patient. He can sleep through anything.
Is the dog more patient, or are you more patient?
I'm not a doctor. I don't need patience.
But the flooded highway was just an inconvenience. The neighborhoods in and around downtown Raleigh really felt Fran's wrath. This is the city of Oaks, after all, and many of our oaks blew over in the powerful storm, taking power lines with them, crushing anything upon which they fell. Historic Oakwood was particularly hard hit. Oakley Herring, a longtime Oakwood resident, is philosophical about the hit his neighborhood took.
When everything gets cleared away and you're going to ride down the street and you see a big hole in the landscape, the treescape, and yeah, I think it did a lot of damage to Oakwood. I mean, other than just physical damage, I think it did a lot of damage.
Perhaps the most telling example of this storm's power is what it did to Crabtree Creek and Crabtree Valley Mall. Floodwaters still hadn't receded by late this afternoon. As of tonight, Wake County authorities are now estimating that $930 million in damage was done to Wake County. That's right, $930 million because of all those downed trees and the rooftops torn off. That's the bad news. The good news is that at least some of the power is coming on. You're looking at a house right here in historic Oakwood. But that's just one house in an entire neighborhood. If you look right across the street, yep, the place is still in the dark.
An odd thing happens when we share a common tragedy like Hurricane Fran, a sense of community and helping each other.
News Channel 11's John Clark shows us how that's alive and well in the face of what may seem insurmountable problems.
When Hurricane Fran turned Oscar and Berta Lee Walker's front yard into yard waste at their Overland Road home, they had to look no farther than the house next door for help. David and Sarah Merriman.
These are our neighbors that we like a whole lot, and I know they're elderly, and we've got a big mess out here, and we just decided to come out and help them clean it up.
Good neighbors is better than money in the bank.
In fact, scenes like this are being repeated all throughout the heart of Carolina. It's perhaps the only good thing about this storm. Neighbors helping neighbors. At 5 Points, not only did these neighbors share in the cleanup, they shared the storm itself the night before.
Last night, this tree fell around 12, and everybody came out in the streets and was flagging cars down, and we all sat up all night together so we wouldn't have to go through it alone, and it's just, we've really pulled together as a community.
We're just happy to be here. We survived and the house could be replaced.
Ruby and George Green found themselves with a massive cleanup job at their Lyndhurst Manor home today, a job made easier with the help and support of neighbors.
Mrs. Hicks has just been an angel of mercy. She came over this morning and said, what can I do to help? And she and her husband have just been fantastic.
It was really nice to see that we had no damage to our property, and we wanted to get out and see what we could do to help our neighbors, and that's why I'm here today.
John, we're on Hardiment off Wake Forest Road in North Raleigh, and if you saw us at 8, which I know you did, I don't know how many of the viewers did, there was a tree was just laying across the road. We had crews here sawing it up. Well, now they have finished the job, and there's a lot to see around here. Now, tree's been cut up. These lines are dead. Of course, you should not go near any downed lines, but we happen to know that these are not live. This area now is open, not to traffic. We've seen a lot of cars coming by trying to get through, but it is open for the CP&L crews to come and do their work. They're expected here next. They're going to be trying to put all this back together. Now, this is going to be a problem area. If you look up at the power line, you can see this line just snapped right in the middle. The pole is broken. The line's on the ground. They're going to have to replace that pole before they can do anything else. So maybe a while before this particular area is fixed up. Now, across Wake County, 130,000 customers are still without power. That's much better, however, than 11 o'clock last night when it was 145,000, John. So things are looking up. We've got the sun out. We've got some traffic lights up. We've got main thoroughfares pretty much powered back up, so people can go out now. Situation not quite as dangerous as it was, but do please be very, very careful as you're driving around because you don't know what you might come upon.
Reporter Todd Shearer shows us how some are trying to get back to their homes and how frustrating it's been.
Fran came in pushing an angry sea in front of her. She tossed boats into pilings and her screaming wind yanked trees out of the ground. We watched Fran come ashore at Southport, but the storm's eye cast its destructive gaze farther north. These aerial pictures show the peeled roofs and crumpled homes on Barrier Island. For residents of Carolina Beach, these pictures on TV are as close as they've come to seeing what might have happened to their homes.
No, man, I have no idea. Haven't been over there, so we don't know.
For a second day, state troopers and police are blocking the bridge to Carolina Beach. Not even homeowners can cross. Meanwhile, no matter where they live in the Wilmington area, many are still without power. Crews are trying to get the electricity back online, but with so many lines down, the process could take weeks. That's a bigger inconvenience than just missing out on TV and some lights. People are forced to scramble just to do something as basic as keeping food from spoiling.
This tree's on Hardimont in North Raleigh, but there are similar scenes all across Wake County. Last night, 145,000 customers were without power. By this afternoon, the number was down to 130,000. Mark Tomasulo was among those thousands watching repairs he hopes will bring his life back to normal.
I'm not counting on it. There's just too much damage. So much damage, you don't know what's going to happen.
Hurricane Fran brought down power poles along with lines and trees on this street. This is just your standard 45-foot pole, and here on Hardimont they've got to put in 3 of them. But it's not as easy as just yanking the old one out and sticking the new one in. This is a job that's going to take a lot of time and a lot of work. That's because the crew's got to avoid buried gas lines, pipes, and phone cables while working fast with fewer hands.
If it was a normal working day, you'd have loco come in, locate if you were to replace a pole. In this situation here, we had to do a lot of hand digging to keep from having more complications.
And complications are precisely what folks like Mark don't want. All they want tonight is to see the lights go on in Raleigh.
In Durham, most people do not have power. Duke Power officials tell us the Crest Street and Irwin Road areas now have electricity, as does the Imperial Center area in the Research Triangle Park. Reporter Tara Williams joins us from Durham with the very latest on the power situation. What do you have for us?
Well, let me tell you, it is the question on everybody's mind. When are we going to get power here in Durham? Well, Duke Power says that they hope to have a good portion of their customers up and running late tomorrow or sometime on Monday. Now, they hope to have a majority of their customers with power by midweek. And then for their customers in the outlying areas, they're hoping to get them with power by the weekend. So as you can imagine, Duke Power has a huge job ahead of them. Duke Power has about 300 people working to get Durham's power back on. That's 4 to 5 times the normal amount. With a storm as powerful as Fran, crews are doing their best to restore service.
System-wide, this is the 3rd worst storm in our history, Hugo being the 1st, the ice storm that hit us in February of '96 being the 2nd, and this one being the 3rd largest in the company's history. We have 65 to 70 that are normally stationed in this area that work on a daily basis with us. As of 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon, we had brought in about another 130 personnel, so currently we're a little over 300 just in Durham currently working on service restoration.
The Durham residents we talked with are trying to be patient as crews work to get power going again, but they are starting to get a bit anxious.
Being out without power a day or so, or 2 days, just like as time goes on, it gets worse. You know, I know there's a lot of people without power, they can't do so much, but I just wish, you know, be glad when it's back on.
Crabtree Valley Mall sits in the valley of Crabtree Creek. Friday morning, the entire first floor of the mall was flooded with water. The parking lot looked like a muddy lake. Now, the News Channel's Melody Hunter-Pillion went to the mall today to take a look at the cleanup operations, and this is what she found.
Hurricane Fran pushed Crabtree Creek well over its banks, leaving the Crabtree Valley Mall parking lot under 6 feet of water. Today, the water's receded. Water trucks with sprayers washed away the mud. Inside, the mall, usually filled with shoppers, is filled with mud, water, and workers cleaning up the mess.
We had 4 inches of water. We started last night. We had people getting the water physically out of the mall last night. We started at the Belk Inn. We're going this way. The entire mall will be cleaned by the sea.
The second level of the mall will reopen tomorrow. Sears, which took on 15 inches of flood water, will also open its automotive area.
What we hope to do is be able to have the customer go into the auto center, tell us what they need in terms of tools and hardware type items, and then we will actually have runners that'll go get it for them and bring it right back. So it will be a little limited in terms of the customer being able to walk around through there. That's going to be a week or two before we can do that.
Things are starting to get back to normal here in Southport. If you look off in the distance, you can see that a light is on in that house. The electricity came back on here in Southport just a little while ago, about a couple of hours ago, actually. Life is getting back to normal in some of the other beaches west of here, like Holden Beach. You'd appreciate this. Some Triangle residents we ran into there today actually said that they came from Raleigh to Holden Beach for the electricity. But that island wasn't spared completely from damage, especially on its east end.
It's very devastating, and we have a lot of questions that we have to get answered is you know, whether or not we can survive on the second row.
Hugh Betchman's house weathered Hurricane Fran, but homeowners across the street weren't so lucky. Although there are still furnishings of a livable home, erosion forced residents out of this place long ago. Fran just finished it off.
This one had burned, and this one was on the edge of the water. So we had been very anxious for them to be moved, but we didn't know they were going to get moved like this.
Even for areas that didn't see that much damage, what's noticeable is the massive amount of new sand here. Take this picnic table, for example. Not that uncomfortable for someone my size, but there is a lot less legroom here than there used to be. Fred Jones knows about sand he's been digging out for 2 days.
Back in '54, there was a natural waterway through here that Hazel made. And we knew that. It was the Army Corps of Engineers filled it in, and when we built on this lot, we knew that it was a low spot of the beach. And it looked like Mother Nature was trying to cut the channel once again.
Vacationers won't be fishing here for a while. The pier was cut in two. But overall, Holden Beach fared pretty well, and Hugh Betchman is looking on the bright side.
We had 2 houses in front. Now we're front row. You reckon we can up the rent a little bit?
We've got some breaking news and some disturbing news at this hour. We've learned someone has drowned in Raleigh at Crabtree Creek. The News Channel 11's Melody Hunter-Pillion is live on the scene with more. Melody?
Well, Gail, we'll actually have to say presumed drowned. A teenager is missing after swimming with a friend this afternoon in Crabtree Creek, a creek that is running swift and high right now after Hurricane Fran blew through. The accident happened here late this afternoon in the Lassiter Mill area, not far from North Hills Mall. Here's what we know right now. Police say 2 teens were swimming here earlier this afternoon. They were swimming above the dam that used to be part of Lassiter Mill. They both went over the dam once. The second time over the dam, they got into trouble. One teen made it to shore with the help of a neighbor. The other teen is missing. Now, the physical water search for him was called off because the water is so high and swift right now. So police say they had to pull those boats out for safety's sake.
The boats have done about as much as they can do right now with the water conditions. We're going to continue to maintain this crime scene. We're going to have officers out here 24 hours a day, still looking, and in hopes that we can find the missing individual.
And that missing individual has not been identified yet. And again, it is a presumed drowning. Now, the physical water search for that missing teenager cannot resume until these high and swift waters calm down somewhat.
Topsail Island took a beating from Hurricane Fran. Everywhere you looked, decks, debris, and destruction. Sue Smith's family brought her here when she was just 6 months old. They ran Barnacle Bill's Pier and Restaurant 29 years, until Hurricane Fran.
We just got to get cleaned up. I mean, people in Wilmington, you know, I mean, just because there was a hurricane and we're an island, that doesn't mean that
we're not supposed to really be here. We've been here for a long time.
The pier toppled to Hurricane Bertha. Fran took the rest. 98% of the structures on Topsail Island have some kind of damage. A third are so heavily damaged that it'll be cheaper to rebuild them than it would be to repair them. Gerald Thomas's mobile home made it through the hurricane. Few of those around him did, though.
They say the north end's worse. If it's any worse than this, I don't know when they'll get back power and cable vision and stuff like that. I don't. It'll be a while.
Authorities say damage was so bad at Topsail Beach to the south and North Topsail to the north, even property owners cannot get through. Damage here is so severe, even the most optimistic say it will take months to get Topsail Island in usable shape.
Another consequence of Fran's aftermath, long lines. Now, if you've tried to get gas, food, ice, or water, then you can relate to this story. Tara Williams spent the time trying to buy some gasoline. Tara, how long did you have to wait?
Well, for gas, it was anywhere from 15 minutes to a half an hour long, but for other items, it just really depended on what you needed to get. You could wait several hours up there. Fran has closed so many businesses, so the ones that are still open, they're going to be very busy. In fact, we drove around Durham today. We found that the lines today were just as long as they were yesterday. Consumers are still feeling Fran's bite. People out getting supplies or gas today in Durham. No patience and a little extra time were a necessity. At the Food Lion on Holloway Street, there was a 15 to 20-minute wait just to get in the store.
As many people yesterday as it is today. I guess everybody just found out that we were open. I think we're the only grocery store open in Durham.
Customers also had to wait at the BP gas station next door.
Waiting in line for gas for about 20 minutes. We had to come all the way from Fayetteville Street to get gas over here because every gas station is either closed or the lines are out on the street.
But the longest lines we found today were at a dry ice outlet. The wait at Carbonic on Miami Boulevard was about 1.5 hours.
Had been out all morning combing food marks and no one had any ice, period. So we're just trying to get enough to keep our freezer going until the electricity comes back on.
Talk about the morning rush. This is one for the record books. By 10 this morning, Denny's restaurant on Wake Forest Road in Raleigh had already served 1,500 customers with a line reaching out the door. How are people finding out that you're open? Are they just driving around?
They're calling on the phone. Like 7 million phone calls. Hear it? It's like ringing every other minute.
And talking about minutes, most of these folks put up with a 45-minute wait.
Actually, we did, but it went by fast because they were working pretty fast today.
Advice from these diners: if you're searching for food, bring along your patience.
1 chicken sandwich, 3 hot dogs, fries, and a large Diet Pepsi.
Nothing, it seems, shuts down the famous Char Grill. The one at Edwards Mill was up and running all afternoon with quite a crowd around. These cooks, too, are working as fast as they can. Some of the biggest help is coming from the Edwards Mill Harris Teeter in Raleigh. They're giving out free water and free ice today. They started at 9. They're giving it to anyone who stops by, and this was the line at 11. Dozens of people long, the parking lot full, lots of ice and lots of water to be handed out.
Thank you, man. You're welcome.
Taking what food is still preservable out of the freezer and put it in a cooler, and I'm in line to get 2 bags of ice and some water for everybody to drink.
Folks in line say it's great to get some help when you're down, and this simple idea will help so many struggling to get back on their feet.
Okay, when do you think they'll be able to get down?
They're telling me 1 to 3 days, and they told the Highway Patrol 1 to 7 days.
Frustration. Everybody's feeling it, from the residents who've heard Carolina and Curie beaches were hit the hardest to the officers ordered to keep them out. The only people allowed on Pleasure Island are cops and cleanup crews.
Got sand, probably about, in some spots, 2 foot deep, about a block, half a block maybe off the boardwalk. That's what we're going to be doing, trying to clear the roads right now. You've got storm water coming up through the manholes. There's no utilities.
And there are homes badly damaged and some destroyed and 4 feet of water in places. But descriptions aren't enough for homeowners left waiting on the other side of the bridge.
We camped out right here in our vehicles last night. And, you know, just let us go see. If we don't have anything left over there, we'll leave. If our place is all right, we'll leave.
The town hall does not own Carolina Beach, and they don't own Curie Beach. The homeowners own it.
and the private business owners on it. So we need some, we need to get on here to take care of business. If the state troopers can drive around out here, so can we.
Not as long as Corporal Archuleta is manning this post. He's been here since the hurricane hit and may be here 4 or 5 more days.
They keep repeating themselves. I give them an explanation. They don't want to buy it. But why? Why? What if? I don't play the what if game.
Well, those residents of Carolina and Curie Beaches will be able to leave these deserted streets of Wilmington very soon. They got their wish late this afternoon, found out that the officials on Carolina and Curie Beach will allow them back on the island on a restricted basis tomorrow at noon. They can go to their homes, no other place, and they will have to have identification. The story is not so good for those on Wrightsville Beach. They say they may not be able to get back on the island until Monday at the earliest. Gail?
Okay, sounds like some pretty determined residents, Sabrina.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much.
So you think the sheets of rain and howling winds that ripped through the heart of Carolina were bad? The aftermath of Hurricane Fran may be worse, especially for commuters who ordinarily use Raleigh's Wade Avenue to drive into the city.
We are certain that Wade Avenue will be closed as a thoroughfare for the next couple of weeks. A culvert there has washed away, and it will take us that long to replace it.
And that's the kind of news no one wants to hear after surviving Fran's fury at the end of the week. But that rupture is just the beginning. Raleigh, known for its stately trees, has lost quite a few to the fast-moving storm. Now, county safety officers worry about homeowners using
chainsaws and other pieces of clearing equipment that they are not accustomed to using. We are beginning to experience a substantial number of injuries resulting from that. Just like to ask the citizens to be very cautious in their operation of these power tools.
City and county leaders appreciate the assist from city workers and homeowners who've been cleaning yards and streets of storm debris before sanitation workers arrive.
Power's off, phone's off. We got water, though, and we got gas heat. But we don't need heat because it's 90 degrees.
And they had good news from the Red Cross for people without power in Wake County who need ice.
Tomorrow morning, they'll deliver over 1,000 bags of ice to the public without charge to Millbrook High School. That's Millbrook High School at 7:30 a.m. And you can just come over and I'm sure it'll be 2 bags of ice per family.
It'll take more than ice to help storm victims move past the uncertainty that blew into many neighborhoods with Fran. But the ice could soothe and cool people who've been enduring a tremendous amount of stress lately.
Cynthia Parker is breathing a little easier today, but that wasn't the case just 24 hours ago. She's lived near the Little River in Spring Lake for 13 years. Yesterday, its banks started swallowing her backyard.
It's almost like a lake out here. I've never seen it like this before, but we're just going to hang in there and let the good Lord do his thing, and we'll be here.
The river is starting to go down, but not before this tributary washed out part of Manchester Road near Pope Air Force Base. It stranded scores of residents in a nearby mobile home park.
It's high, but I wouldn't expect it to go really no higher. We've still got plenty of high ground, and if it does, I think we'll still be safe.
Across town, the Cape Fear River was also bursting at the seams. Forecasters had predicted the river would crest at near record height. Fortunately, it didn't. Now, things are actually getting better here at the Cape Fear River since it crested at 46 feet yesterday. Look out at that awning you can see underneath it. That wasn't the case yesterday. Over here, there's a boat ramp, believe it or not, but you can see it's still underwater. Janet Leith is very familiar with the Cape Fear River, too. Yesterday, it came knocking at her back door in Grays Creek.
I was praying. I prayed a lot, but we made it, and everybody was real lucky. I think we were all real lucky. 2 trees down in my yard, my chain link fence is down, but that can be repaired.
So as utility companies and road crews work as fast as they can to put things back to normal in the wake of Hurricane Fran, those who live near the river must be patient and let nature slowly drain what's left of a storm that has devastated so many.
Power has been out in most of the Triangle for 3 days now. The lack of power is making ice and water very valuable. The Winn-Dixie at the North Hills Mall in Raleigh was among those stores handing out free water today. Although people were grateful for the water, what they really had their eyes on was something a little colder.
We'd heard on the radio that they were going to give away ice this morning at 8 o'clock,
And of course, we've been without power and telephone and that since Friday night. They said that they're giving away water, not ice today, so I'll have to try someplace else, I guess.
We're here to get ice, but I understand we're getting water, which is great as well.
This right here is what everyone is waiting to get their hands on. This bag of ice here is worth its weight in gold today. You can see the people behind me. They've been waiting to get 2 bags of this. I think some of them have been waiting maybe 2 hours now. It's about a football field line wait to get this ice.
We're waiting about 45 minutes for ice, and we're hoping that what they're telling us at the front of the line is true, that the truck really is coming. We don't really know for sure.
People are almost getting used to seeing this scene. Down trees and power lines mean no power in this Raleigh neighborhood for a 4th night, and many homes across the heart of Carolina are still sitting in the dark after Fran's departure, and different people have different ways of coping or not. Residents in this neighborhood off Hillsborough Street are spending a 4th night with no power.
We're enjoying candlelight and lamps and you know, gas lamps and stuff like that, and I just grilled some chicken on the grill, and we can adjust to this.
Adjusting can be frustrating when the house on Ruffin Street has electricity and Pat Rand's house next door on Ferocious is lit only by lantern. Still, the neighbors were neighborly enough to run an extension cord to the Rand's refrigerator. The Rands are coping.
That's kind of charming. I mean, I wouldn't want to do this all the time, but it's okay for a little while. I know the power company and everybody else is doing everything they can to get it hooked up again.
Until the McCasklins of Cary are hooked up again, here's what they're doing to cope in a home with no AC and no TV.
We were hot. We don't have any air conditioner or any power, no telephone, so we decided to come to the movie and get cool and get us a cold drink.
She's carrying home what has become a rare commodity, a cup of ice.
Okay, so we're completely booked for this day.
Some folks simply cannot or will not cope in a home with no power, so they're camping out inside climate-controlled hotels.
We're just across from Wrightsville Beach. You can look back and see this is the road to Wrightsville Beach. It's pretty quiet now except for a few police officers. Tomorrow morning it will be jam-packed, full of cars. And that's because boats like this one thrown out of the marina across from Wrightsville Beach, they're the only evidence that residents have had as to what it's like on the island. Tomorrow morning, they'll have the chance to cross that bridge and see what's really there. And the residents at Carolina and Curie beaches had that chance today.
Do you think I would have stayed down here during a hurricane?
Tammy Best was one of the first residents to return to Pleasure Island today. The drive was unnerving. Boats were thrown out of marinas. The center pier is gone. The lake at Carolina Beach still has roads and homes underwater, and not just human residents displaced. When Tammy Best did make it to her home, she found Fran had left a big mark.
I cannot believe the water was that high.
This is the water mark
This is
here?
the water level.
Residents who rode out the storm almost lost more.
When I walked outside, it's like I looked around and all of a sudden a shingle just came slash me in the face.
See, this townhouse saved our lives. It's right here because it's coming up around the corners. It's come up to our second doorstep. And it come down the corners, and then when it was all over, we looked, and everything around us was flooded out.
The destruction is much worse on Curie Beach, where relatively new oceanfront homes set well off the water buckled under Fran's force, sometimes clearing the lots completely. Officials have condemned 80 homes on this island. These are certainly to follow. And for those like Tommy Best who still have homes here, thoughts of cleaning up are overwhelming.
This is mud and water and sea muck and I can't even cry.
At dawn today, a camp sprang up at the front yard of Dixon Elementary School, complete with satellite phones, search dogs, and 125 of the country's most highly trained search and rescue people.
Just go ahead and get your gear ready and then report to your individual squad leaders.
FEMA rescue teams organized by Fairfax County, Virginia and Montgomery County, Maryland fire departments rushed to North Carolina when reports surfaced that no one could find 4 or 5 people last seen in North Topsail Beach just before Hurricane Fran hit. The teams boarded helicopters because North Topsail suffered such a hard beating, most of the road washed away. Their job, search damaged houses for victims or survivors.
The FEMA urban search and rescue teams are simply to assist the local jurisdictions to help them in any way we can. We don't try to come in and take over.
So they walked the sandy streets, and one by one they checked the houses. They did find a litter of kittens and the mother cat. That's all they found today, but it was enough. Mike Marks just finished a visit with his brother and parents in Raleigh. He searches damaged buildings. He uses a sledgehammer to force the doors open, and they look in every nook and cranny. His job is sad and rewarding at the same time.
I made it to the Oklahoma City bombing, and it was a good feeling being able to restore families together, whether they, at least they were able to recover their family members and give them proper burial.
The search and rescue teams found no victims and no survivors today. They will search until they've checked every house in North Topsail.
Hours before daybreak, Jolita Prince drove from the small community of Jonesville to Millbrook High in Raleigh for one bag of ice. She was second in line.
Anything will help, really. Anything will help.
By 5:45, Kathy Wall claimed the third spot.
We went to Greensboro yesterday. There was no ice there. They told us the trucks had come in, and we looked. We took coolers and everything, couldn't find any at all.
By 7:30, they were joined by hundreds of people they never met. Within minutes, they were trading tales of hurricane hardships. And when the truck was 30 minutes late, it didn't seem to matter.
We can fill up your cooler or go ahead and give you a 40-pound bag.
By 9:15, the mood shifted.
I need to tell you, though, that it will be a couple of more hours.
The small community dissolved, and families went back to fending for themselves.
I have to go. I'm disgusted. I've been here since 5:30, and it's so hard to find anything, ice, water, or anything.
But some decided to stick it out, and at 11:45, their persistence paid off.
Thank you so much.
And by noon, the volunteers had it down to a science. They take the ice out of the back of the big truck and put it in the back of people's cars.
Fran's far from over for Angie Broadhead. Her power's out, so her well won't work, and she's down at the neighborhood gas station, filling up with water.
Mostly what I'm using it for is to bathe my children in and flush commodes because they've gotten terrible. And the lady next door has 2 children also, and she's using it for the same reasons.
Angie's just filled 20 jugs for the 3rd time in one day. She's ready for all this to end. These guys at the BP station down the street are faring a little better, although they can't salvage this car. Fran is bringing in business. They've towed 25 vehicles since Friday and seen some serious damage.
And this Ford Probe was at Granville Towers. A young lady was getting out of it, and the windows just blew out of it.
While she was near the car?
Yeah, she was in the car when it blew out. The back window and the 2 side windows blew out.
Granville Towers, where that car was damaged, is now without power. Lights are out, doors and windows propped open. Near campus, homeowners have their hands full. A similar scenario all over town. Folks around here near Airport Road think a little twister might have come through here and ripped up all these trees, but more than likely it was just Fran's sustained winds that blew through here and knocked everything over. For that reason, and countless others like it, no one is questioning Fran's force today, least of all Angie, who now knows all too well how wayward winds can change our lives.
We've always wanted an ice machine.
Risa Stone and her family were near the front of the line of Wrightsville Beach residents returning home. They've waited 4 days since Hurricane Fran to see what was left of their inlet and house. They lost everything on the first floor. Closer to the beach, the view was similar. The famous Johnny Mercer Pier is all but gone. Parts of Wrightsville Beach were saved from bad erosion. In fact, right here, there's even more beach. You see, it now extends into the parking lot. The Shell Island Resort wasn't so lucky. It lost its last protective dunes, so it's even seen erosion since Fran.
We came down here Thursday morning and took pictures and marked where it was just to come down here today to see what happened, and it's just amazing how much, it's gone now.
I think we were all expecting it, but you can never imagine how bad it can really be.
That wasn't the only resort to get hurt. The Holiday Inn lost part of its roof and parking lot. The most common damage was to rooftops, but as Risa Stone points out, it always could have been worse.
They're all things. They're just things. They're not people, they're not animals, they're just things. They can all be replaced.
I expect we got probably 80% damage down.
Like a lot of farmers throughout the heart of Carolina, Johnny Hubbard, his brother and father, added up their losses today.
It's worse since Hazel, since I was a young boy. We've got about as much damage as since Hazel came through.
The Hubbards figure they lost 400 acres of corn to the hurricane winds. And what they didn't lose to the winds, they're losing to rot and mold. They say the fields are too wet to try to get in and salvage a harvest.
When the machine goes in the field, if it don't get stuck, you see the corn will come up by the root. It won't strip the air off. And therefore you get just like a bulldozer going out there.
The sad thing about Mr. Secretary, see the cost already in.
U.S. Secretary Dan Glickman got a lesson in farming and economics today during a whirlwind tour of the Hubbard's farm in Cumberland County. After seeing the destruction in soggy fields firsthand, he promised help.
Unfortunately, this disaster occurred at a time when, generally the farm economy is turning better, and so it's kind of a tragedy built upon a tragedy. But people here are resilient. We're going to do our best to provide the resources that we can do.
Glickman was too far behind schedule to visit other places where tobacco crops were ruined, like Roger Starling's farm, where he says insurance will cover most of his losses.
This year's the worst I've got 75% in the field. Here and the rest of it, I got 75–80% out of the field.
State and federal officials say it's too early to tell how much of the cotton and soybean harvest will be lost this year, but say corn is a bust. The Hubbards are hoping for a break, not only from Mother Nature, but a hand from Uncle Sam.
We need some low-interest money. We don't want to give, we just want some help. We'll pay it back, but we just need a break.
Cary, usually known for its upscale charm, is just like every other town that's met Fran in chaos. Drive down almost any Cary street and you'll easily find roadblocks made out of trees and power lines. Dwight Wagner, who hasn't had a bath in days, drove over 300 miles before finding this generator in Burlington.
Walked in Walmart, was going to get coolers. We didn't get coolers. All sold out everywhere we go. Everybody was sold out. And I happened to ask the girl, I said, well, you got generators? Yeah, I think we got some. And it was like a miracle, like a blessing.
These days, the only thing folks are praying for is more cleanup crews to roll into town. This crew made its way from Asheville, calling the cleanup effort a dangerous feat.
Pressure on the power lines, where it's got that, we could be cutting this in the pole fall. Or when the tree's on the lines and it's got major pressure, everything you cut's a danger.
And the damage is so bad in Cary, some CP&L employees are trading their business suits for hard hats and gloves to help get Cary back online.
Business development?
Business development. Wow, so you're out here from business development, huh?
That's right, I'm not selling any heat pumps today.
You might not want to hear this news because across eastern North Carolina and here in the capital city, officials are saying that the easy part of the recovery from Hurricane Fran is just about over. And Governor Jim Hunt says that in order to get things back to normal, everybody's going to have to do more.
I'm not satisfied. And this is not a time to come in and slap people on the back and say, you've done a great job. Now take off some. We done good, we got to do more.
Governor Jim Hunt told his emergency team to find more creative ways to help North Carolinians out of the mess left by Hurricane Fran. The governor heard today the towns of Raleigh, Wilmington, and Chapel Hill pumped raw sewage into rivers when their waste plants quit.
We came close to closing the University of North Carolina and the city of Chapel Hill because of a sewer problem.
A fish kill on the Cape Fear River has been reported from raw sewage. No hog lagoons leaked. Also, nearly 500,000 North Carolinians remain without power. In the capital city, major traffic artery Wade Avenue will remain closed for weeks. CP&L has more help on the way, but a spokesman says the work will go slower now.
We are getting to the point, though, where we've done the easy work now, and everything that we're doing now is basically rebuilding the system.
Wake County Commission Chairman Gary Pendleton says he is after companies that price gouge.
And tell us about it, then we will have somebody in the county employee will verify this, and then at the next county commission meeting, we will read the names of the business and their address, and then we'll give them some good advertisement.
Now, government leaders say that everyone needs to understand that everything just is not going to be fixed overnight. It's going to take a lot of time, and getting upset about it just isn't going to help.
We've got some good news from Duke Power. Right now, there are only 9,000 residents out without power there in the Chapel Hill area, 30,000 customers without power in the Durham area. Crews are working 24 hours a day, still shooting for midweek to get everybody connected here around Durham as the cleanup around Durham moves slowly ahead. 2 days of work, and Robert Green says he's making a dent in the dense foliage covering the corner of his Forest Hills home.
Trimming.
But it's hard to tell.
That's what I'm doing here, trying to get all these leaves up to the front there, and then it'll be picked up later.
You think you're going to get it all done anytime soon?
Oh, no, it'll probably be a couple days.
which is soon considering what many folks are facing. Still, most streets are clear, and though Fran herself was enough to stop the U.S. mail last Friday, her aftermath is not.
I know it's been pretty busy. I haven't had any problem on my route, but some people can't get down some streets, but we're doing our best.
If you're still not getting mail today, you should call your local post office. And if you're on the roads, you should pay attention to these guys. Durham police officers are out to make sure residents drive safely, even though a lot of traffic lights remain out.
Milton's Barbecue in Rocky Mount is closed today, bracing for its next visitor, the Tar River. With the tar already above flood stage, right about now, it's expected to crest near 20 feet, which means from here it can only go into Milton's dining room. Neighbors on Milton Drive have already evacuated in anticipation of what happens here whenever the tar gets too full. And the fire training grounds look fine from the top, but the bottom is pretty waterlogged. Meantime, Wilson is cleaning up literally thousands of trees taken down by Hurricane Fran, and some of the remnants are sobering.
I think the worst house I've seen was over in the Branch Street area where it was just completely demolished. The top was, cars were demolished, the whole roof was in. Horrible sight.
Got up the next morning, it was knee-high, or waist-high actually, in branches and leaves. Took me 2 days of the hardest work I've ever done to get it clean.
About a third of the city, or approximately 3,000 customers, are still without power. Crews have been brought in from as far away as Tennessee and Georgia to help. And the sweltering heat isn't making the task easier. Wilson officials ask if anyone can help provide ice. It will be greatly appreciated.
Since last Friday, CP&L officials have been faced with a dilemma, trying to figure out how they could restore power to nearly 700,000 customers in North and South Carolina. After using all of their crews in this state, they're turning for help from their colleagues from as far away as Texas. This CP&L district office in Cary is a temporary welcome center these days for crews all over the country.
Jennings, Louisiana.
And they met here to get their last-minute instructions and to get a hot meal before heading out for the night. And CP&L officials were also busy doing everything they could to make sure their visitors have what they need to do the job, like maps.
It kind of gives them a map of how our system is laid out and where to go, and sort of a guide in case they get lost also.
We have a lot of teamwork, so it really kind of removes the pressure element, and everyone's really working hard together.
Close to 3,500 crews from as far away as Louisville in central Illinois drove thousands of miles to help their counterparts here in North Carolina.
We do the same thing, and they would do the same thing for us if we were to have a disaster like this.
Even if it means leaving their families behind temporarily.
Yes, sir. 3-year-old son and a wife, 8 months pregnant.
What goes through your mind?
Stay here about a week or less and go back home.
This crew from Muncie, Indiana has worked nearly 14 hours straight, getting residents back online, which they say they appreciate.
They stop, by, say, hey, we love you, this and that, they're real appreciative. We're glad to be here, and that's how we make our living. We appreciate the work.
So after all is said and done, nearly 5,000 utility crews will have covered nearly 30,000 square miles in North and South Carolina, a job that they hope will be complete within the next 2 weeks.
I'm here in the Haymont section of Fayetteville. This is one of the hardest hit areas in town. Still several houses without power. I was here Thursday night when a big tree came down in the front yard here at Francis and Ralph Hall's home. Power has been out since Friday, and they say that it has been a struggle since then just to do day-to-day chores. A backhoe pulling away branches and debris, a welcome sight for Ralph Hall. He and his wife have worked for the past 10 years getting everything just right outside. It only took Fran moments to blow away years of dreams.
Well, I thought it was a wreck out here on the corner until I opened the side door, and then it was a wreck.
This is what Hall and his wife saw. A giant oak tree that has graced their front yard was blown to the ground. But it was actually a neighbor's tree that knocked down power lines that put most of the block in the dark. Now the Halls move through the house with flashlight beams cutting a path to everything they do.
Making sandwiches mostly. And then we have gotten ice in an ice chest. That's our main way we've kept ice water.
What's the biggest inconvenience for you?
Electricity and air conditioning.
an ice chest for a refrigerator, flashlights to light up rooms, and 2 people who refuse to let a storm with 80-mile-an-hour winds blow out their spirit. You're one of the few houses over here. How you feel knowing your neighbors got electricity and you don't?
Best of luck to them.
Now, it's been 4 days since the power went out here, and as you see, it's been kind of a struggle just to make it day to day. Good note here, though, Larry, is the fact that the electric company told the Halls that their power should be back on by noon tomorrow.
A measure designed to ease a threat for many people is threatening several homes in Raleigh. Water is pouring out of the Falls Lake Dam. The Army Corps of Engineers ordered the massive discharge to keep the lake from flooding its banks. Take a look at these pictures. It's a real catch-22, though. The water pouring out of the lake will raise the Neuse River to 4 feet above flood stage for the next 2 weeks. That means big trouble for several subdivisions along the Neuse River. Flooding also a problem in several other places in the heart of Carolina. If you look closely, you'll see this river has a yellow line down the center because it's actually a road near Autryville in Sampson County.
Tomorrow at this hour, students are expected to start mobilizing on the campus of UNC Chapel Hill, working together to clean up the debris. The University Chancellor Michael Hooker is asking faculty, students, and staff, even alumni if you want to help, pitch in and help clean up the campus Wednesday afternoon and evening. Fran left a trail of stately oaks on the ground all across campus.
For many, a local radio station has been a lifeline during Hurricane Fran. For some, it's been a lifesaver. News Channel 11's Jennifer Silverman is live in Chapel Hill with one woman's story. But Jennifer, it's really a story that many people have been living through, isn't it?
Oh, sure, John. And this lady lives so far out in the rural areas that we couldn't even get our live shot out from where she is. So we're standing here in Chapel Hill. You can see the destruction here near campus is pretty bad. The destruction in the rural areas is even worse. So imagine being elderly out there alone, trees in your yard, you can't get out. The lady we talked to says she wouldn't have made it without her radio. WCHL Radio in Chapel Hill is doing an amazing thing. It's single-handedly helping hundreds of area residents struggling in the aftermath of Hurricane Fran.
HUD says the recovery is going to require extraordinary efforts.
That's what 85-year-old Elsie Lloyd was listening to 2 days ago, stranded and alone in her home on Bethel Hickory Grove Church Road in rural Orange County. She'd already spent 3 days without power and didn't know what else to do, so she called WCHL.
I just told them that I didn't have lights and that I was very sick and I was an invalid and that my lifeline was out and I had called the emergency room and they said they'd see what they could do.
That got everyone's attention at the radio station as Elsie's plea was broadcast across the heart of Carolina.
I think in the case of Elsie, she was there for 2 or 3 days with no power, didn't move anywhere, didn't go anywhere, didn't know really what was available except for the fact that she had her probably battery-operated radio sitting beside her and listened and decided, hey, I need to call in and see if these people can help me.
And within hours, an Orange County Sheriff's deputy arrived to cut Mrs. Lloyd's trees. She's still without power, but she's no longer stranded. And she's got a story that's touched all our hearts.
Johnston County, as well as many of us in the heart of Carolina, is expecting more of what we do not need, and that is rain.
And rivers, ponds, and lakes are overflowing as we speak. News Channel 11's Gilbert Bays talked with flood victims in Johnston County. He's live in Smithfield tonight. Gilbert?
Well, Monica, I'm at the Neuse River right now. You can see it behind me here. This bridge behind me is Highway 70. I want to show you the tree line out here. That's actually where the bank of the river is. You can see that the water extends now about 25 yards back up here to me. The water has receded an awful lot. Let me show you where it was Saturday. It was all the way up here against the building here. You can see part of the debris that's washed up. And this is the line that was up here Saturday. The water was this high. It is starting to go down. But as we've already mentioned, Bill and both you and Larry have told us, there's more rain on the way.
Fresh water.
Ann Wallace has been through this drill before, filling ice chests with water, making sure the area is safe because of possible flooding. She did it when Hurricane Hazel came through years ago. She's doing it again because of a storm named Fran.
It was horrible. It came way up. I did not worry about it getting in my house because of what we have done to the yard. But across the street, it was in my friend's basement.
This pond in Ann's backyard gets flooded when the Neuse River overflows its banks. Now this is what it was like Saturday here in Smithfield. Water shooting up from the ground, roads turning into streams, and scores of people forced to evacuate this rest home.
Some of the houses are going to have a lot of problems. You know, we know people with 4 or 5 foot of water in our house.
So and the more rain it gets, the worse it's going to be, obviously.
The water is going down now, but that's not much comfort for people who live here in Smithville and know a flash flood warning is in effect. And they've seen the devastation left in the path of the raging water.
I'm afraid of the water. We have so many young children in Smithville. In fact, I have 2 grandchildren here, and we're already boiling our water.
Now, the public utility here in Smithville and in Johnson County say it's not really necessary at this point to boil the water. You can if you like to do that. If you want to do that, then do it for at least 3 minutes or so before you use it. Again, Larry and Monica, we're at the point now where people are just bracing to see what's going to happen the next several hours. More rain comes, you can bet that this river out here, the banks are going to start to expand once again.
All right, we'll keep watching it, Gilbert. Thank you.
All the rain from Fran has caused massive damage to a major Wake County thoroughfare. Just take a look at this massive sinkhole on Wade Avenue. The eastbound portion is closed at Faircloth Street near the Meredith College campus. The westbound portion is shut down at Oberlin Road near Cameron Village. Authorities say it may be closed for several weeks. You may not have seen them, but the National Guard is also working hard to get our lives back to normal in the Triangle and across the heart of Carolina.
The Guard has set up a tent city to provide emergency housing for hundreds of utility company workers. News Channel 11's Dave Bullock is standing by the Triangle's newest residents.
Dave, what's their plan of action there?
Well, the plan right now, Larry, is here on this remote corner of the North Carolina State Fairgrounds to finish putting up this tent city. It's raining outside, so we're inside the medical tent. This whole community is being set up, the first 500 beds, by the Florida National Guard. It will provide food and shelter for a lot of utility workers. Eastern North Carolina ran out of hotel and motel rooms for emergency and repair teams 2 days ago, but they kept coming from a number of other states. Today, the Florida National Guard brought in a tent city to feed and house the utility crews.
Line it up, line it up.
First offenders from the State Department of Corrections Hoffman Boot Camp set it up.
So we got 500 and there's another 500 coming. But now I got to decide where we want to set it up at the last 500 at the fairgrounds, was move it somewhere else.
Hey, Ryan. Florida sent the troops because North Carolina did the same thing following Hurricane Andrew.
Length of stay is unknown at this time, but we will stay as long as North Carolina wants us here to help in the relief effort. We know to build this compound, it's going to take us ultimately 4 to 5 days. So that's a given.
And the North Carolina Guard, which has finished some of its early assignments, will also set up a tent city for 500 utility and other crew members starting this evening at the fairgrounds.
They'll have, of course, shelter. They'll have cots. We have showers and potable water. Certainly we have food for them and electricity. It'll be just like living outdoors for 500 at a time.
The old people that's been here for years, they say the flood of '64 is the worst one on record. They say it's already deeper here than it was then.
Marion Bradford's fished on the News River before, but he's never been able to launch his boat from his yard. He can now. The river began rolling out of its banks last Friday after Fran brought Wayne County 5 inches of rain, but areas to the north got between 8 and 9 inches, so the News has been rising ever since.
Yesterday morning at 6 o'clock, there was no water on it. Yesterday about 10 o'clock, we were walking out of there knee-deep in water.
11 streets in Wayne County are closed, 2 dirt roads washed out completely, and officials urged 400 families to evacuate. And the News could get worse. The Falls Lake Dam opened today to relieve flooding upstream. In Wayne County, the News is now flowing at 50 times its normal rate. That means Marion Bradford's house may be the next to go under.
Frank and Egan stays down on the far end down here. His one's already flooded. It's just mine and Donnie P's in the middle of it. It hasn't quite got in the houses yet. But if it keeps rising, it will.
If you've seen the Falls Lake Dam, you know it doesn't usually look like this. But Falls Lake is full, almost overflowing with runoff from Hurricane Fran's rain. And with the possibility of more afternoon and evening showers dumping still more water into the Neuse River Basin, the Army Corps of Engineers decided the only way to make sure the dam holds up was to open the floodgates.
In Hurricane Fran's ravenous appetite for destruction, everything was unfair game. Sports-wise, golf courses were at her full mercy, thus paid a steep price. Witness the layout of Raleigh's Carolina Country Club, still trying to recover from 300 downed trees and flooding. On the ground, cleanup work continued at Hope Valley Country Club. Power was still off to the surrounding Durham community, and take a look at the 15th fairway, closed due to falling timber.
Here at the Governor's Club in Chatham County, not only did Fran pay an unwelcome visit, but her destructive path was worsened by the presence of 2 or 3 tornadoes.
For residents of this plush community still in search of full power, over 5,000 trees went down. Featuring the highest point between Chapel Hill and the coast, it's easy to see why the 9-hole mountain course suffered the bulk of the battering. There's more than just sand in this greenside bunker. Or you can call the 25th tee box a tree box.
Well, it's fairly depressing right off the bat. You know, one of the things that makes this course and the property unique is all the trees, and as a result of that, you just have so many trees to pick up, and just a lot of handwork because you'll damage the course if you do it with heavy equipment.
As we've seen throughout our region, the workload is tremendous, but the human spirit will prevail. In fact, just a driver away, 18 holes at the Governor's Club are back open for play.
Early estimates put Hurricane Fran's damage to Cumberland County farms and crops at $22 million, but some damage is irreplaceable. Today, crews began reducing the old oak tree at Fayetteville's Haymont United Methodist Church to sawdust and logs. The landmark, long recognized as the oldest oak tree in North Carolina, fell victim to Hurricane Fran. Some members had hoped to resurrect some of the wood.
Some people have suggested making small wooden crosses to be presented to the children at Easter time.
The congregation is grateful the huge tree fell away from the church, but members of the tiny Godwin Baptist Church in northern Cumberland County aren't so lucky. Their historic sanctuary may be felled by a falling tree that splintered rafters and beams and buckled the church walls. Repairs will be expensive.
Money-wise, you're looking at anywhere from $120,000 to $150,000.
That tree's
Rosalind Holland says the 4 or 5 members still active in the small church are counting on faith to make up for what insurance doesn't cover.
We've got the faith. We've got the faith. So I just want it, if it's the Lord's will, that He'll see a way that we can get it restored.
In other communities, it was Army reinforcements that rolled in to help. The troops, like these Fort Bragg engineers, came armed with gloves and front loaders and trucks to help clear debris from the streets.
We have equipment, especially for relief with trees. We have the chainsaws, the loaders, and the dump trucks that we're equipped to do this mission. It's not our primary mission, but we can do it if needed.
These huge sections of Topsail Island are closed to everyone tonight. Property owners are limited stretches of the island are being carried on military Humvees for 15-minute checks of their property. Property damage on Topsail is astounding. Roads are out, all power, water, sewer, and most phone service is out. There is no projected date for getting any of it back.
We're taking a tour of what was once the perfect home.
This is where the tree came through the roof. And all our new cabinets we just had done with the painters just left 2 or 3 days ago.
He means 2 or 3 days before Fran. The Allens worked on this Orange County farmhouse all summer, renovating from top to bottom before moving in last Thursday. Hours later, the hurricane hit.
I saw the roof had caved in and was like resting on the island in our brand new kitchen where we just had all the cabinets installed. And there was a waterfall coming through there that within 15 minutes we had 2 to 3 inches of water in our entire house.
So today, the Allens are moving out of their new house because of this.
Here's what it looks like from the outside, a giant oak that came crashing down. The Allens call this tree the monster. It destroyed their home, destroyed their dreams. They don't know what they're going to do. They don't even know if they can still live in this house.
As I say, the only thing we can do is just keep our wits upon ourselves, and I've been trying to keep my wife happy by telling her dopey jokes and things, but yeah, we'll work it through.
And though the Allens have plenty of family to help lighten their load, only one thought can lighten their hearts.
Afterwards, when I thought about it, we're just thankful to God that we were saved. And we weren't really meant to leave this earth yet because we were in the middle of the trees falling, and we feel very, very thankful for that.
This is where they're monitoring what's happening with the Cape Fear River here in Cumberland County. As you said, that the Army Corps of Engineers has decided to lessen the flow out of the Jordan Lake area, and that, of course, feeds the Cape Fear River. That's great news for everyone here, but what the Army engineers can't control is nature itself. Got a little drizzle here. We had some heavy rain in Moncure, so that water is eventually making its way downstream. We know the water's coming. The only question now is when. Johnny and Cora Nunnery's marriage has gotten off to a stormy start. The Cumberland County couple tied the knot Wednesday, the day before Hurricane Fran hit. They live in Grays Creek, near the Cape Fear River. Now they're hoping the water doesn't pick up where the wind left off.
I had a deputy come up here just after the storm and said that they were going to different points checking the flood levels. And she come up here and she checked the river out, and she said we may have to evacuate.
Over the weekend, the river crested at 46 feet. That's 11 feet above flood stage. The Nunnerys have seen the water creep very close to their home.
You should have been here the other day. It was up way up about 15 feet from back doorstep. It's about 100 some drop, and it's just keep rising. It's dropped some now, but they're expecting it to rise again.
The Cape Fear River isn't the only one with flooding problems. The Neuse River is causing headaches for people in Johnston County. It pushed water out of manholes and turned streets into streams. The Nunnerys hope they don't see pictures like these in their backyard.
Well, I'll ride it out until it gets up here to my trailer, then I'll do what I have to do.
This sign at the entrance to Chapel Hill's Camelot Village Apartments does not tell the whole story. Not only is the road subject to flooding, but according to residents here, so are the low-lying apartments closest to nearby Bowlin Creek.
There's just everywhere muddy water. Yuck.
You can see from the water marks left on the walls in this apartment, Hurricane Fran dumped a foot of water here. Bottom floor apartments and 3 buildings sustained flood damage when Fran swole Bowlin Creek early Friday.
It was a mess. Those carpets were soaked, and there was an inch of water in the kitchen left.
Today, residents are nervous. More rain will bring more flooding.
We got a call from the fire department that said to watch out, and that always makes you nervous. When it starts raining a lot, we go and peek.
Miriam Thomas peeks at the creek just to make sure it's not overflowing. She and her husband moved into a bottom floor apartment in June. They didn't hear about the building's flood-prone history until it was too late.
We didn't know when we moved in, but after that we started hearing things. But it was people outside the complex that said, oh, it floods all the time.
The apartment complex has hired temporary workers to help residents clean up.
They don't have a place to go. They just stay here on the top of the water. I'm just doing the cleanings, taking up the mud and whatever needs to be done.
Cleanup is underway, and waterlogged carpets have been stripped. But if there's too much rain tonight, residents fear they'll have to go through all this all over again.
You know, for some folks, it's been 6 days now without power, and that, of course, can mean 6 long days without a hot home-cooked meal.
News Channel 11's Greg Barnes tells us about that part of the hurricane recovery effort. He is standing by live outside the Army's Command Center in Fayetteville. Greg?
Well, Larry, I want you to look at something historic, a sight never seen around Fayetteville and Cumberland County before. Command Center here at the Utah Village Shopping Center just off Bragg Boulevard, where Fort Bragg soldiers have set up their command center where they're conducting all of the cleanup activities, a joint training mission, if you will, with the Fayetteville Police Department, who have set up their command center here as well. Now, day one of their cleanup mission here has gone off without a hitch. It's been a perfect day, a long day for the Fort Bragg soldiers. They're closing up shop tonight, and we'll be back out here again tomorrow morning. While they conduct all their operations from here, a few blocks over at Snyder Methodist Church, there is another rescue mission going on, this time feeding the multitudes. When you're cooking for a crowd, you can't always go by the numbers.
All right, that's 2. That's 3. Okay, that's 6. That should be one pot. This is 4.
Since Saturday, volunteers and Red Cross workers have turned tons of donated food and canned goods into hot meals. The Southern Baptist Association set up this portable disaster kitchen in the Snyder Baptist Church parking lot. Some of the Baptist cooks here know what it's like to go hungry after a storm. They're from Florida.
It's hard work. It's the hardest work you'll ever do. You start at 5 o'clock in the morning and you work till 9 to 10 o'clock at night.
It's menus by the cans and the case. Today's lunch, a touch of Tabasco sauce added to pots of mixed vegetables and meat that Mary Miller says is pretty good.
If you like all that, it's good.
You see any skinny guys around here?
I'm sorry?
You see any skinny people around here?
I don't know. You eat your own cooking, huh?
No.
So far, Lee Clare and his fellow chefs have cooked up nearly 20,000 takeout meals, most of which have been distributed by Red Cross workers to storm victims in Cumberland, Harnett, Sampson, and Robeson counties. A blessing not only there, but on the serving line here for residents like Sean Evans. Says she hasn't had a hot meal since her power went off 5 days ago.
They just came on yesterday.
Do you have a lot of food spoilage?
Everything is gone.
No good hot meals, huh?
None. This is the first one for me.
The Red Cross plans to keep the portable kitchen open here for at least another week. Tomorrow, a new shift of Christian chefs comes in as these volunteers head back home to Florida.
Throughout the capital city, streets are blocked by debris. Debris which prevents the restoration of power, the opening of schools, and the smooth flow of traffic. There's a lot of work to be done.
This is just physical work that's more than people can handle. I have a friend that has 2 holes in her roof, and she can't get anybody to help move the trees out.
Yep, after 5 full days of hurricane cleanup, this is what the streets of Raleigh still look like. So what do you do if you're the governor of North Carolina? Well, Jim Hunt has decided to call in the cavalry. The cavalry in this case being the North Carolina National Guard. Today, the governor called in an additional 1,000 Guard members to help clean up. When a large contingent arrived at the state fairgrounds this afternoon, the governor was there to greet them.
This is the most devastating storm to ever hit North Carolina. And as you see it, you're going to be amazed at what's happening. And we really appreciate you coming out.
The cleanup effort, spearheaded by these troops under the stewardship of the Army Corps of Engineers, will be funded for at least the next 2 weeks by FEMA, which should provide some relief for the overtaxed agencies at the local level.
As Bill mentioned a moment ago, there are several flood watches in effect right now, and one of the areas with the most serious problems is down east in places like Wayne and Wilson counties. News Channel 11's Sabrina Smith has been out in those areas where the flooding is a real problem right now, and she joins us live in Wilson with the latest. Sabrina?
Well, Monica, you just have to look to the sky to see the bad news. It's cloudy here. Looks like it could start raining again tonight. All the rivers and lakes down east are above flood stage, and the situation has gotten gradually worse all day.
Stay right in the middle.
It started as an inconvenience. Drivers in Wilson this morning had to take detours to work, but by midday the story had changed. The Toysnot Reservoir was taking over homes, and city officials were starting to get worried about the water supply.
Well, basically, we'll place them around the far side of the dam to prevent erosion, also to keep the water actually out of our pump stations, our raw water pump stations. We're very concerned about that.
To the south in Goldsboro, the action is more drastic. About 1,000 residents have evacuated their homes. The Neuse River is the problem there. It's been rising out of its banks for 2 days. Some homes are halfway submerged.
Houses going underwater. There's propane tanks floating around everywhere, tires. I seen somebody's big old pump house just wash across the top of my fence. And my fence is, I bet you it's 5 feet of water right there where my fence is at around my yard.
In Rocky Mount, residents are floating too. This neighborhood used to be 200 yards from the Tar River. Now it's smack dab in the middle. A trailer park upstream is partially submerged, and some residents are moving. Others are just waiting it out.
Well, it's nothing we can do. I mean, yesterday we upset us, but I mean, we look at it now. What can we do? Just sit here and wait?
Now, you saw some video of some folks in a canoe. That probably was relatively safe, but health officials around here are starting to worry about people testing the water. You can't see what's below the surface. All types of things have broken loose from homes and cars and equipment, and in some cases there's raw sewage flowing down the streets.
They came to the old well for their assignments with a big task ahead, cleaning up the mess Fran made across the UNC Chapel Hill campus. At noon, 400 people were on the job, raking, tugging, hauling, and downsizing Fran's destruction. Sisters of Kappa Kappa Gamma couldn't budge this heavy tree, one of the many blown over by the storm. Still, they carried their load.
After seeing scenes like this, beautiful trees falling down all across their campus, it did not take much encouragement to get students, faculty, and staff over, helping in any way they could.
All our big, huge trees that made the campus so pretty, and they're all down, and it's really a bad situation. And we went back to the normal UNC.
We've seen through the hurricane a sense of community spirit all over the state, and I'm happy to see it manifested here on campus.
Follow the chancellor. I think he knows where he's going.
Chancellor Hooker suspended all afternoon and evening classes, took up a rake, and called for a voluntary campus-wide cleanup.
It was our campus, and I felt that, everybody should come out and try to pitch in and try to get things cleaned up.
Students came up with today's volunteer cleanup.
This is the place that we call home for students. It's not just a place that we pass through, but a place that we should care about as if it were our own, as well as for faculty and staff. This is where they work. This is a place that they believe in and a place that they're going to work for to try to clean up.
They pulled, they yanked, and when the tree fell, they cut it up in little bitty pieces. 20 state employees got together today to help clean up from Hurricane Fran.
Done 2 so far. We moved some
trees away from one of our workers' daycare center, and now we're moving the stuff away from Bill's house here.
Monday, Governor Jim Hunt threw his staff and state personnel people a curveball. He gave many state employees in the county's declared disaster areas the week off to help dig out from Hurricane Fran.
But the main purpose behind this is to help clean up and to work at home. It's not staying at home, it's working in your community to help people get over this storm.
Hunt can do that. He's the boss.
My intention is to give them some flexibility. If there's a real need in their community, I want them to pitch in and help.
Nothing like this has happened that anybody can remember.
I think it's something really different, unique, really imaginative. I'm glad he did it.
The governor says the state employees in the disaster counties will work. They'll just work helping recover from the storm, which immediately confused about 40,000 state workers. So Hunt says people who have jobs at hospitals, prisons, law enforcement, and emergency agencies do have to go to work. As for the rest, he wants them to dig out and help their neighbors as well, which is what these state employees did. They say some might abuse the time away from the office, but add they've found plenty of work to do.
We have our eyes on several big trouble spots this evening.
We do indeed, and one is the area along the Neuse River in Wake County. Falls Lake is filled to record levels right now, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has been releasing extra water in order to relieve pressure on the dam. Well, that's been very bad news for folks in several developments downstream along the Neuse, because some of that extra water is rising up toward their homes. News Channel 11's Dan Henry is joining us live now from the Perry Creek subdivision. Dan, people there must be pretty worried.
Oh, I'll tell you what, Miriam, they've been walking on eggshells since Fran first hit here last Friday morning. Now, as you look back here through the woods, the Neuse River is actually supposed to be about 75 yards back there. But as you can obviously see, the water has come all the way up to within about 15 feet of this house here. And although the water level has stayed constant pretty much all day long, the forecast of more rain and of more water being released upstream has folks here very concerned.
Even 5 days after Fran's devastating winds stopped blowing, the nightmare continues for Jamie Knight. Controlled releases upstream from Falls Dam have pushed the swollen Neuse River dangerously close to her house. At one point yesterday, right up to the foundation. And she says not knowing when or if the water will flood their homes has many folks here extremely nervous.
I feel like a pressure cooker. That's what I feel like, and nothing else can go in there or it's going to blow up all over the kitchen. And that's the way everybody feels out here, because nobody knows, and nobody's keeping us informed.
Now, Wake County Sheriff's deputies have been monitoring the water level here periodically throughout the day, but one question they nor anyone else can answer is how high this water level will get, and unfortunately that's a question really nobody can answer. That will depend on exactly how much rainfall we get and how much water is released upstream from Falls Dam to see how high this water gets. So needless to say, folks here will have at least one more sleepless night. They are very, very concerned about the water here.
John Wellens isn't sure what to make of this, a stretch of Jeremiah Drive about the length of a football field covered with overflow from Jordan Lake.
I and the rest of the people on the road are trying to look at the positive sides of it because it's really beautiful, and it's kind of like an amusement park ride in a way, but it is a drag having to just, carry your things by a boat from one area to the other.
And since John's the only neighborhood resident with a car on the mainland side of this mess, he's spent the past 4 days ferrying other folks back and forth. Folks like Terry Constant, who remembers a similar flood in March of '87. This one's 3 feet higher, a new record.
In fact, I marked a tree over there. I think it's about 8 or 9 feet deep at this point.
And it might not go down for up to a month, leaving folks in 13 homes temporarily stranded.
Well, of course, after we checked out the houses on the other side, we had to row back. John was kind enough to take us over. I thought I would be kind enough to help row on the way back. It's about a 5-minute trip, rowing all the way.
Here at Jordan Lake, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is well aware of the problem. At the dam, they're already releasing 9,000 cubic feet of water a second. They can't go any faster for now because of Moncure, Lillington, and Fayetteville. They're all downstream and in danger of flooding if water's released too fast. Experts say they won't let that happen.
Once we get the gates fully open, if Mother Nature cooperates and doesn't come through with any other storms, we hope to have the gates fully open for at least 2 straight weeks to try and get the lake back down.
And while they monitor ever so carefully, John, Tony, and everyone else on Jeremiah Drive will wait patiently for this lake to disappear.
There was no fancy military name for this operation. They simply called it Operation Woodchuck. For the first time ever, Fort Bragg troops invaded Fayetteville, rolling down neighborhood streets that often looked like war zones, a sight that left many, including Fayetteville's mayor, a bit awestruck.
There's no way I can express in words but what Fort Bragg has showed us in deeds.
Close to 500 soldiers were sent in to reinforce Fayetteville street crews and help with the cleanup here. Other soldiers were sent to other communities around the base in Harnett County and down in Robeson County. Many of the troops here are combat engineers. Some, like these soldiers, are demolition experts who would normally use explosives and mines to clear debris from the street, but today had to use sweat and elbow grease on a familiar mission for some.
The soldiers from my company have cleaned up after Hurricane Hugo, Hurricane Andrew, and now Hurricane Fran. So this is old hat for us, sir.
In typical military fashion, the soldiers were able to fill and dump upwards of 20 trucks of debris an hour. Other Fort Bragg units also helped out, including artillery and signal brigade units, and Fort Bragg MPs helped police with traffic patrol in areas where the troops work. A routine mission, a humanitarian cleanup, a different mission at a different time, in a different place. An act of neighborly kindness residents call a godsend.
It's an impressive thing from what I can see, you know, that they care enough to come up here and help everybody.
I just want to say thank you to General Keene, every soldier at Fort Bragg. It's just wonderful.
They are dealing with some of the most serious flooding down east in Wayne County. That is where an estimated 1,000 people may be forced out of their homes because the Neuse River is likely to crest tomorrow. News Channel 11's Anthony Wilson is near Goldsboro tonight. Anthony, any problems there yet?
Not so far as we know, Miriam. Right now they're having a voluntary evacuation going on right now. I'll give you an idea of why they're asking people to do that. If I was standing next to that fence over there, the water would be up past my knees, possibly toward my waist. The folks here have apparently already cleared out, and you can understand why folks down here are keeping a nervous eye on the skies tonight, hoping that it's not going to rain. The Neuse River is starting to spread into parts of Wayne County that are usually dry. It's an uncomfortable situation for fish and people cut off from their homes by high water.
It'd probably be up to the trailer, up to the very bottom. And my house and his house is one of the higher elevated houses. The rest of them's underwater.
And I was walking down the road today, and the water was about up to here to me.
That's why there's a shelter open just down the road. But these people are sticking around to keep an eye on their property. They feel helpless and frustrated.
We got our horses out and our dogs and our car, that's it. We didn't have enough time to get anything.
So you left with the clothes on your back?
More or less. I got a change of clothes left and that's it.
Some of her neighbors are wading through the murky water to see how badly their homes are damaged. Others are staying put inside these buildings. Neighbors say somewhere back there's a man with 2 children.
Last I heard, they were still back there. That they had supplies from the hurricane, they were staying. But that's awful deep water back there.
He's got some nerve, that's all I have.
He does.
I don't know if you heard that man in the background. He said that guy has some nerve, but unfortunately they want the people not to stick around in these areas that might get flooded. They'd rather have them go to the shelter. There's plenty of room over there, but the folks who are running the shelter are worried that not enough people are going to take advantage of it.
As you can see, a lot of people have worked long hours in an effort to get life back to normal.
Before we leave, we would like to thank all those people who put in those hours.
They include thousands of utility company workers, Red Cross volunteers, and lots of everyday folk who pitched in to lend a helping hand.
Plus, we'd like to thank all the employees at News Channel 11 who have been working round the clock to bring you the latest information, knowing that most of you had no television to watch.
And finally, we'd like to thank you for buying this videotape. The proceeds go to the Red Cross Disaster Relief Fund.
Thank you for joining us.